This week, our topic is on the theory in program planning and understanding social problems. That is the subject of chapters 2 and 3 to really get you looking at what is the theory we use when we design a plan. And in fact, they talk about theory in and theory of. And so the theory in is really taking a look at what is the theory of solving the problem. And they give a couple of examples in there, but I've provided some additional resources that hopefully will help guide you through that idea of there's this theory of the process of what takes place, and then there's the theory of how's the plan going to work. And that's a really important takeaway. It's part of your GIST quiz, so I hope you really get it. And the second part is how we define a problem. They look at a framework for a problem, which I may get to here in just a minute really quickly, just to make sure you understand the definition of those problems. One thing I want to mention here is as we go through this semester and as you read your text is really looking at social problems, social needs, and they're talking about communities at large with, battered women and drug addiction and those kinds of things that may or may not be the types of programs you work with. Doesn't matter. The same steps apply whether you're doing something at a small scale in a community or at a much larger scale like the World Bank working for United Nations. And in fact, this topic this week where we look in depth at logic models and you have an assignment to critique a logic model is something that all funders, whether they be a private foundation that has a particular agenda for programming or things they want you to spend time on, whether it be in a small local community for a state or for a country or something that's very large that they're trying to bring in maybe on a small scale first that they can scale up to a larger scale, the theory still applies. How are we going to go about that? How do we look at what our inputs are? How do we look at the types of activities we're going to have for these outputs and these accomplishments that we want to have? And then what are these outcomes that we're going to have that we can measure for actual impact about whether we're making a difference? So as you're reading the text, plug in your own context. I work in a non-formal setting in a community and my target audience is youth. A lot of you in this course are in this because you work with extension programs and you're in one of our extension master's degrees. A few of you might be in the PhD program. You're working with formal education and you are looking at formal programs maybe that have a diploma at the end, but you're trying to evaluate how well the program is meeting its needs. Doesn't really matter. So just read the text with your own vocabulary, through your own lens to understand the process. So this second reading you have here, the CIFAR module, which stands for Children, Youth, Families, and at Risk. I've opened that up right here. They have some interactive learning modules that are primarily designed for the actual evaluation part. After we've gone through a needs assessment, after we've looked at a program and considered how we're going to implement it, with what target audience. This particular group of modules is about the actual program evaluation. And so we won't look at these until we're at least halfway through the semester again, except for this one right here that I'm asking you to look at this week, which is planning for effective program evaluation. And within this module, they have, 7 or 8 submodules, if you will, on logic models. So where chapter 1 covered it fairly quickly, this module goes into detail about how to build a logic model, what each section means, what it is that you're hoping to accomplish with that particular criteria in the model, and it will help you with assignment 3 for critiquing. Because all of those funders that I mentioned, whether they be the World Bank, USDA, a local community, W.K. Kellogg, a private foundation, the National Science Foundation, they ask for logic models. If you are doing a program, they want to see your theory, the theory of how you think that's going to work. That's the theory of how you're going to solve that problem. And so understanding logic models is crucial. If you are doing a dissertation or thesis, one of the things you're going to have in there is a logic model to show the theoretical construct that you're operating with related to your research and how those outcomes are the very important measures that you're trying to evaluate and then provide them to stakeholders to make some decisions about. That's what the difference is really between research and evaluation. Research might be just finding out kind of basic foundational kinds of things, whereas with evaluation research, the thing actually already exists. We need to decide if it's effective or not. And when you analyze the data, that is given to the stakeholders or the funders or members of the community, if you will, to make that decision. So these modules are very helpful if you just go through what is a logic model. There's going to be some videos, some just quick bullets, some things to remember, and you will be coming back to these pages when you develop phase 1 or go through phase 2 and phase 3 of the program that you are developing for the big project, the big report in this class. And so this is a resource that you'll go through now and probably will revisit, but there's videos here, and then at the end to check your knowledge they have some little quizzes, and then you can go on to the next module. So that's part of your reading for this week. There it is right there, what it looks like. And in fact, they have a nice resource here where you can build your own logic model, so you can use their software to develop it. Or if you know what all the elements are, you can use your own software to develop a logic model. And when you Google logic model, you're going to see so many different types, different colors, but you are looking for the basics that are discussed here in these SciFAR, the University of Minnesota modules. All right, back to week 2. So using a logic model, this is the Pell Institute's. It's a good wrap-up. Again, the Pell Institute is a major funder of lots of different kinds of programs, social programs for at-risk types of populations. It's just one of those big foundations that you can apply to. But they have a nice website too here on, it's kind of a good wrap-up, if you will, evaluation toolkit on using a logic model. And they have some other resources that you may find useful as you go through the big field experience that you're going to have this semester. But some nice definitions. And so I'm asking you to kind of skim this, take a look at it. It may help you as you're putting together a logic model and as you're working on this part right here, assignment 3, where you're going to critique a logic model. Now, let's see, I think I have that one over here open. It's just a little faster. Here we go. I provide a rubric. You're going to Google logic model images, and when you do this, you're going to find all kinds of different modules that have, let's see here, that have all kinds of different color, but you're looking for some specific, there we go. Oops, I want just the images. And you can pick whichever one you want. You can download it. You can look at it here by just clicking on it. But I'm going to ask you to provide me a link to what that logic model is so I can look up your critique and see if I agree with what you had right here. So here's an example of a logic model for professional development in mathematics by Learning Out Loud. So these are all logic models that people have created probably for funding using that theory of how it should work for a program and program evaluation of whether or not you are hitting the mark. Okay, back to the resources for week 2. So that's critiquing a logic model, and I've provided a lot of resources for that. Next week, you are going to choose your research team for the assignment, which is big assignment 5, A, B, and C, where you are going to be going through phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, which you read about last week, working in an actual setting in a county office, a county extension office, or, and that's the next part, or you can, let me think here, actually, or the first 3 phases, if that's what I meant there. If you want to form your own team, you can send me a message to discuss for possible inclusion, and I want this no later than September 7th. So let's say that you have a program that you're working with right now that you really want to go through this process with. You can submit to me what that idea is, and if it works, then I'd put that up there as another team for people to sign up for to be part of that research team, and we might just put a little description. So if I take a look at those research teams, and that's actually looking at week 3, I tell you how to get there. Well, here we'll just skip ahead to week 3. There's a link. I'll take it a second here to choose a research team. And I want no more than 5 people per group, preferably 4 people per group. And I've already worked with some folks in this class and some folks out of class to set up opportunities for you to work in the field with extension folks on program, on a needs assessment, program development, a program plan, and then a plan for evaluation. And so I'm asking you to pick these pretty early by week 3 because we don't have a lot of time together, and these things will take time. Each one of these phases is going to take time. So you'll click on this tab called Research Teams, or it may actually just show up. I hope yours looks similar to this. If not, someone shoot me a message. But you will then drag your name, or you can add your name to that team. It might look a little bit different, but you should see just maybe, in fact, you probably won't see all names. You'll just see your name, and you'll pick one of these research teams. So San Juan County Extension, Duchesne County Extension, these are 2 recent graduates from our program. Washington Blue, I just put that as a marker. I had blue and white, and then I realized probably Washington County was going to have one for youth. Benjamin Scow is in this class. He'll be team leading one of these. I'm not sure which one yet. I've got to have a conversation with him about that. And then the other county agent down there, Brittany, last name is leaving me. She will be the person you'll be working with in Washington County on the other team. And then Garfield, that is Callie Ward, who is in this class, and she'll be the team leader there. And then Utah County is also a recent graduate, Kathy Merrill, working mostly with family and consumer science education programs, because that's what she does, is family and consumer science education. And then Team 7 will be all about STEM. So within the next week or so, I may add a little bit more. San Juan County could be a youth, probably a youth-related program, or family and consumer science. Duchesne would probably be a youth, or if you're interested in youth type of programming like 4-H. Washington will definitely have a youth component, but there may be an ag or family and consumer science. Possibly, well, I'll update that. And then Garfield, possibly youth or family consumer sciences. The research team in Utah, already told you, would be that. And then state would be Dave Francis, who heads up 4-H STEM here, and he will be working with the state STEM folks. Again, if you want your team added, I could add a whole nother group here, and I could put your name and put a little blurb or description of what it's going to be like, and you can communicate with that individual too, but you're going to be choosing the team that you want to be part of as a research team for doing the big assignment, assignment 5, doing the needs assessment. So that's a little bit about selecting your teams. Go back to our weekly stuff. So that's a look at what I would like you to do for this week, and just a few highlights then for this week as you do your reading, chapters 2 and chapter 3. If you are looking at some of the takeaways in chapter 2, especially the theory of, that's the process of problem solving. That's the theory that we go through to solve a problem and generate possible solutions. And then theory in is, now I know what the problem is, and I have a way for a possible solution, and I take action for that. So you'll see a quiz question on that. The types of planning that are part of any kind of organization, and we are actually looking at program planning, not strategic planning, not a marketing plan, but talks about the different types of planning for an organization. The assumptions of program planning that we make, and there's quite a bit of detail in the chapter on that. And then this conversation about efficiency and effectiveness, and noting that sometimes we can't just in a social program say, well, it just costs too much. Cost too much related to what? Sometimes we may get great things taking place, and we're really looking at our return on investment for, are we getting enough bang for our buck? And so there's a good conversation about, is this an efficiency that we're looking at, or is it effectiveness? And when we're looking at the bottom line, the bottom dollar, we actually have to consider both of those. There's also a nice graphic in that chapter on business as usual approach and the analytical approach. That's in chapter 3. And I wonder, I think I asked you in one of the discussion questions or the quiz question about whether you've seen this business as usual approach where, hey, this program's been going along and it's fine, and maybe we just get a few more people in it, we keep it solid, but we haven't really measured it. We don't really, if it's still something that's important or needed, and that's the business as usual. And I think most of us have probably seen programming like that. And then there's the analytical approach, where we have this current profile of those in need. We're looking at a problem analysis for research, and we develop approaches that are service-based, and sometimes we're willing to, cut wood. We're willing to get rid of some of those programs that may in fact not be doing what they're supposed to be doing. The chapter also talks about program planning elements, and I don't need to go over those in too much detail because these are all components that you would have in a program plan, and it details those, and you'll be going through that process in your actual creation of your needs assessment and your program plan. And one of the things I think is really important in this, I think it's chapter 3, where they talk about social problems, is remembering the difference between a need and a want. Is there really a problem? And whose lens is that going through? Whose perception is that? And some of you have seen me use in my beach ball activity where I hold it up and I put numbers on it and from my perspective, or in my point of view, I see a number 1, and somebody else's perspective, they see a number 6, and someone else sees a 4, or someone sees a 5. It really talks about, acknowledging that problem, but through what lens. And that's why you want lots of different voices involved when you do the needs assessment, because if you just pick one filter, one group of individuals interested in one thing, that's just one point of view about what's needed. And I think that's a really important takeaway for the chapter. Social problems are ill-structured. I like that concept that they bring out, that they're messy, that those social problems, while we say we're going to tackle this issue, this will fix it, oftentimes there's multiple things going there, and sometimes we need to not cast our net so wide, but keep it a little bit narrow and say we're just going to focus on this one facet. And then social facts versus a social problem. So that's really looking at the actual facts and looking at triangulating that data again from different points of view, and then the perceptions and the context from which those come from those individuals as they're looking at social problems. So that's an important takeaway from chapter 3. Finally, the framework for problem analysis, and I like this. This actually wasn't in their version 4 of their book, I don't believe, but it has going through the cycles of problem analysis, getting back up here to making sure that you assess any ethnic or gender considerations that you have, especially if the mission of your program is to serve marginalized people, if the mission is to serve people of lower income, if the mission of that organization or that funder is to serve women, and you've developed a program that, hey, wait a minute, we kind of forgot this, then we've got to start back into the cycle. So I really like this drawing, and it goes into detail in your text about what each one of these are defined as: determining characteristics of the population, determining the scale, and all of this is important conceptually as you develop your own program plan. Okay, that's my overview for week 2. I look forward to reading your discussion, and also if you do have ideas that you want to present for a team, be sure to send those to me at your earliest convenience so that I can put those inside of the research groups.